That could be too. So Brian, how about next slide? And I'm sorry if you can hear banging in the background. I live in a very old house that has radiators, and they're not always cooperative. So if you hear banging, they're not tearing the house down, although it feels like it. So welcome everybody, and it's so good to have you here. We have a nice schedule. I won't say it's packed, but it's going to be a great way to spend some time together to get to know our regional teachers of the year, hear our updates from MDE, and of course updates from each other as well. Brian, could we have the next slide, please? So the next slide is transitions, because there's only one thing constant, and as we know, that is change. So I hear from Beth that this is Donna Raymond's last DARTEP meeting as she is retiring from Oakland. So congratulations to Donna. Are there other transitions we should know about? I'll turn off my mic and you just chime in if you have a transition you'd like to share.
This is Sally Ray from Siena, but I would simply like to say, Donna, thank you for everything that you've done over the years. Holy moly, congratulations. That's awesome news for you.
Thank you, Sally Ray.
Nice. All right, well, barring any additional transitions then, let's go on to the next slide. So I sent out the Stein very graciously provided the DARTEP meetings and minutes, and I finally got them out to you this week. And we need to have some approval of these minutes. So is there any discussion? Is there anything we need to fix on those minutes? All right, so then if you could turn your cameras on for a hot minute and signify or give a thumbs up if you are in approval of those minutes, please. Any dissenters? All right, so then let's let the minutes show that the minutes were approved. All right, onward to the next slide. So Beth, what's up with the treasurer's report?
We have a treasurer's report. So this is our balance from December. I wasn't able to get January's up and included this week, so I apologize that it is month old, but our December balance is just under $24,000. Brian, if you would click again, please. So we did have one bill that we did pay that was for our lovely lunch that was held at Siena Heights for our last meeting. So again, thank you to Siena Heights for hosting us. We really appreciate that. As you know, we distributed our DARTEP wear. I'm sporting my DARTEP shirt today, as some of you are as well. That's awesome. I have 3 shirts left. And so if you did not initially order one and one of those sizes would fit you, let me know. If you're a paid member, they are free. And if you are not a paid member, they are $40. So just let me know. And that is it.
And on we are marching. We need a May meeting update from Western Michigan. So who would like to tell us what's headed our way, what the planning is, when the reservations need to come in, all that good stuff? So I guess here's a different question. Is there anybody here today from Western?
So I'm here from
Okay,
Grand Valley and I'm on the planning committee. This is Amy Schelling. The planning committee has just met this one time. I think that Jillian Davidson was going to share updates from the planning committee.
For the MACD part, for the continuous improvement part, is Jillian
Yes.
here?
It doesn't look like she is yet.
So, I can get the report, quickly for the MACD report. So pause and I'll get the MACD report, momentarily and then, we can share with MACD. And that part we can tell you about, and then assume that it falls over into Western.
good enough. We will then, I assume, be getting you updates regarding the May meeting later on via email, and that works too. Okay, Brian, next slide. So organization reports. So, do we have anybody from Michigan? We're gonna skip MACD for the moment because she's getting her report. Do we have anybody? Okay, so it says that person that Crystal is not able to attend today. Okay. Do we have anybody from Michigan Public Deans?
Yeah, I can share. So we're going to have a virtual spring meeting. The date has not yet been determined yet. And one purpose of that meeting is to nominate an executive committee, several executive committee members. We're also looking at holding a summer retreat at Northern Michigan and collaborating with MACT on that and MyPI. And then we'll schedule a separate MPED session during the retreat so that if for some reason, if we haven't elected our executive committee members in our virtual meeting in the spring, we'll do it then. And then there'll be also make sure there's a virtual option for folks who can't make it to Northern for the retreat. They can still attend virtually for that.
Thank you, Stein. Is MACD ready to go?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just trying to get my camera to work. Oh, no. It's not working. Well, I'll go in it. Hi, my name is Jillian Davidson from Central Michigan University, and I have the MACD update. And I apologize for no camera working this morning. So our upcoming events for MACD include the Continuous Improvement Conference at Western Michigan University from May 1st and 2nd. The planning committee has been starting to work on that, and we look forward to sending more updates soon. The MACD Summer Retreat, which I know Stein just mentioned, will be held in collaboration with MPEDS and MyPI at NMU, June 10th through the 12th. We are also working on a new committee structure, which includes committees such as meeting and conference planning, grow your own initiatives, legislative and Department of Education advocacy at both the state and national level, and a communications committee. We will be sending out an email with a survey on Monday for information about participating in those committees, as well as feedback about what you would like to see at the Continuous Improvement Conference at Western Michigan University in May. So that's the MACD update.
Thank you very much. Could we have the next slide? We will look at the MyPI information. Whoops, I guess go back. There was supposed to be information about MyPI on the next slide, but apparently not. So is there anybody here from MyPI? Or anybody who was at the last MyPI meeting? Okay, I guess Stein will have to hunt that down. So we're ready to go with the MDE updates. Alum or Sean, you're up.
Great. Good morning, one and all. Pleasure to see you. We've got several updates here. I've got several team members who will be jumping in at different points to share some excellent things. Of course, first is the written updates that went out earlier this week. And again, archived always on the DARTEP website, always valuable. We'll be giving you a selection of things from that and extending there. So first thing, wanted, we have needs. We will always need program reviewers we have a window of applications in April. So we continue to need reviewers so that we can do superb peer review of the excellent programs you're building for the new grade bands. Continue to need individuals who have that expertise in the different subject areas, particularly science and social studies. So those are the two big ones coming through in this round. Reviews, if you are a reviewer or if you have team members who are doing reviews from the November window, we do have a due date of February 16th to receive the program review rubrics back and your feedback. So keep in mind that date. If for whatever reason you cannot make that date, just let us know and we can we'll make a note of that so we don't pester you come next week to give another written reminder that the reviews are due. As I mentioned in the last DARTEP meeting, closure forms and rosters. So as you're onboarding the new programs, we do need to close out the old programs and make sure that everything is up to snuff in MOEX and on our public directory. So continue to send those in. I do thank everybody. We got a flurry of them after the last DARTEP meeting. So thank you very much for getting all of that into us. As always, we need MTTC committee members for just about every purpose, and that's the written updates that Bridget prepared. As you see, there's a flurry of activity coming up on new tests from standard setting to all the way to objective review. So sort of going in reverse order of the test development cycle. So plenty of things going. And as also, we need pilot test takers. So as new tests are developed before they can be made operational and have a standard setting, we need pilot test takers to try it out and see how it functions. There's information on that in the written updates, and Bridget can tell you more about that process and why it's an awesome thing to do. As noted in the written updates, there hasn't been much legislative action since the December because the legislature was on break for an extended period of time. However, we do have three things here that are emerging or continuing along. One is the Science of Reading and Dyslexia bills. There are two bills, 567 and 568. That will be heard by the Senate Education Committee. They were going to meet this week to talk about them or to take testimony. They are actually going to meet on Tuesday, February 6th. And one is very much about what K-12 schools should be doing in this area, and the other is about higher education. So MDE supports these conceptually. And we do look forward to working with the legislature to improve the bills so that they can be humanely and effectively implemented and dovetail nicely with the other initiatives that we are working with you on, particularly our implementation of literacy teacher preparation standards. We were asked to provide some representation at the committee hearing to answer any questions about possible improvements to the bills. So if you watch the live stream and there's a question that relates to higher ed, you might get to watch me speak in front of the Senate. So whoopee, or the Senate Ed Committee, that is, not the whole thing. So anyway, the 2024-25 budget So if you saw the governor's State of the State address, she did emphasize education, lifted up the kinds of investments that have been made. Her executive recommendation will be coming out next week. It'll be presented to the legislative committees, and that's going to kick off a whole new cycle of budget making and deal making in the House and the Senate, and we'll ramp up our related work. So all of the grants that we have administered come from these budgets. So the future of those, what new things would be invested in, and investments that going forward, or continued investments. And last, we were asked to provide some feedback on work keys, proposed bill that changes with changes related to that work keys assessment for high school students. So just some background there. Go to the next slide. This is MTTC updates, and Bridget.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to come to you with good news. The test fee reimbursement grant it went live this week. There was a little bit of hiccups with the email that was meant to go out. Most people got it by on the 30th. Some people got it on the 31st, but candidates are going to get an email from Pearson. It's the same account that they get all the other emails about from regarding their registration and their scores. So we know that that's a link that works. They've been really patient with the few hiccups that we've had. The way that it works, they'll get a notification that they are probably eligible for a grant. They then are directed to go to log in to their MTTC account, which is just the regular mttc.nesinc.com. Under the My Account, there's several actions they could take, like getting their practice test, getting a score history, and the test application will be one of those things they can look for. Applications are going to continue to be available in their account as testing continues. So, the first big round of emails went out yesterday. If somebody tests today, they'll probably get an email notification that their application is ready by like Monday. It's supposed to be a pretty quick turnaround. So those are going to be going like on a rolling basis now until we run out of funds, so which hopefully doesn't happen. But I do want to encourage you to let your candidates know that they should apply early. There is a slight chance that the $1 million that the legislature allocated for this might run out. So, we'll have a better sense of that as we get into like August and September. That's obviously numbers that we're tracking. I did have some questions pop up in my inbox from folks saying, well, I have to take another test in March. Should I just wait to do them all at once? No. Go get all your money now, right? It's owed to you. So just there's no need to, try to bundle them all together. If your candidates have any questions, or if you have any questions, of course, please let me know. I'm really happy to help. And yeah, if there's anything else, let me know. I'm excited about this. Good opportunity for folks.
Awesome. So standards updates. We have multiple things to share with you, and Aklam will speak to the first.
Well, of course, it has to happen at least once, right? Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. The proposed school librarian standards were presented on January 9th to the State Board of Education, and they are now available for public comment. We encourage and kindly ask that you share these out to your circles, because the more input that we have, the more that we have to work with in analyzing and revisiting the standards before taking them back to the board for approval in May. They're open until March 10th. The link is available to the survey in the written updates as well. So please do refer to that and encourage your colleagues in your professional networks to also contribute. Next slide, please. The public comments for the disciplinary literacy standards for grades 5, 9, 7, 12 were reviewed, and there were some revisions, slight additions and language edits. And the second presentation to the board is scheduled for March 12th. There is currently work underway from the initial committee members and additional colleagues working on implementation guidance for these standards. Next slide, please.
This will be Gina's turn.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to provide a little update on 3 standards groups that we have going right now that are coming up, just to make sure these are on your radar. We have a special education teacher standards group going right now. We're creating a essentially a cross-categorical special education endorsement. We don't know exactly what they'll apply to, but the general thought is that this teacher will be able to serve in rooms or placements that need either EICI, LD, or POHI, our initial thoughts. It'll be a standalone endorsement. So our group is started with aligning standards to the Council for Exceptional Children standards. They are just about ready to send a draft to targeted feedback people. And those are individuals who are mentoring as special educators, mentoring candidates who come out from programs. So if you have maybe cooperating teachers or mentor teachers who are really, really good, who you think could take a look at these standards for us, that's the kind of person I'm looking for, or faculty who teach in our special education endorsement programs. So we're looking for people right now for targeted feedback. We're anticipating having something ready to send out to individuals in February for this particular group. So you've got my email there. Please send me anyone you think would be great. This is an independent activity they do on their own time. And we're really looking forward to getting feedback on those. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then we also are working on revisions for visual arts and music. The visual arts group is both standards groups, by the way, started with the Michigan standards and built off of them. So, you know, they're not going completely off the rails, but they really are, they're changing these standards into things that resemble and align with our new certificate structure, really focusing the standards on what candidates do, what candidates need to be able to know and do when they come out as a teacher, and just aligning those pieces with our professional standards and other expectations. So the visual arts group also is ready for targeted feedback at the end of February. Again, we are looking for additional PK-12 mentors or faculty members who might want to provide us feedback for visual arts. The music group is a little bit behind the other 2 groups, but they're probably going to be ready for targeted feedback by April. So I am also seeking people for that group as well. And thank you so much. I think that's it for me. Next slide, please.
Yes, now turn things over to our data and accountability unit. Jason is here. Kate's here too, but I think Jason prepared these slides, so go right on ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Good morning. So first, just want to start off with a CPAST update for folks, which is a clinical observation tool that we've had 5 EPIs piloting this fall. My understanding is that all EPIs, they will also continue to pilot the tool with their in the spring, summer semester with another cohort of candidates coming through the pipeline. One thing that we did sort of as this internal CPAS group is we carried out a survey of all the participants who were using this tool for the first time during the fall semester. I did on the DARTEP listserv, I sent those survey results out to everyone with endless array of charts and whatnot for you to look over so you can see what the full results are. So I'll just share a couple quick comments from that PDF with folks. One just a quick survey here. If you do look through those slides, you'll see the majority of responses were positive across all response groups about the CPAS. One of the things that NDE and I think the group really like about the CPAS that you may or may not be aware of is that the CPAS uses consensus meetings where the candidate, the cooperating teacher, and the supervisor all get together and they go through that rubric together and sort of try to develop a consensus about where the candidate stands along those various dimensions. And so one of the things that we asked about in the survey was their reaction or their feedback to those consensus meetings. And just, quick summaries there, you'll see, 84% of the candidates thought, yeah, we got really good feedback because of those consensus meetings. And same thing with the teachers and supervisors, 80% saying, yeah, we're getting more thorough feedback than we might otherwise give because of these consensus meetings. And overall, for the teachers and the supervisors, just one of the closing questions was, what tool do you want to use as you move forward working with your EPP? And 53% did favor continuing to use the CPAS, and the other 37% were just indifferent to which tool their EPP utilizes. I have right here, this is maybe the best quote, sort of an open-ended feedback that we saw in those surveys. And I cut the quote a little bit short because there were a couple sentences before this, but the basic idea was, yeah, these tools are all the same. They're using all the same grading dimensions and whatnot. But the really nice thing about the CPAS is the consensus meeting. And so that's kind of what they're getting at with this last sentence there. So I wanted to isolate that sort of as a point of emphasis. And then just two charts, you can go to that PDF and look through all the charts, but just two to show you real quick. One, this is of the supervisors and cooperating teachers, which were all grouped together. And they were just asked, did the consensus meeting help you think more critically about how to evaluate candidates? And again, you can see large number of folks saying, yes, this was really helpful in terms of letting us really evaluate those candidates. And as you might expect, if you're doing consensus meetings, it's going to take some time to, schedule those meetings and get get all three partners together at the table at the same time. So there's depending on what you're currently doing, there may or may not be some additional steps. So one of the questions was, was it a good use of your time to, get this consensus meeting off the ground and get folks in the same room together? And pretty much everybody agreed, except that one person. One person strongly disagreed that it was a good use of their time. That one person who disagreed, they had the most negative comment in the open-ended feedback. There was one supervisor who said that they would quit their position as a supervisor if their EPP continued to use the CPAS. Apparently, this person felt there was no value to those consensus meetings, and it was just too much time for them unless they were paid more money. But outside of that one person, everybody else gave us good open-ended comments about the CPAS. And so I think I counted maybe 3 or 4 of the EPIs who are using the CPAS were with us today. So I was going to, if we can go back to that last slide, I was just going to give them a chance to chime in if there's anything they want to share about their experience using the CPAS tool for the first time.
Hi, Jason, and everybody else. This is Sally from Siena Heights. And yes, we were one of the schools that piloted this. We have one more faculty member doing it this semester, which will help give us a little bit more feedback. I agree with the comments that I think it was a good tool. The only snag that we found, and it's fixable, I think, it's just an addition that might need to be put in. If we're going to use this for CAPE or for any other reporting systems, there was no way for us to validate any scoring that we gave, right? I mean, yes, we had the consensus meeting, but we didn't have any literal quotes or anything from the candidate when we're observing them that we were able to put in under each comment. At the end of the section, sure, there was great conversation, and we did have really good conversation. So I'm not saying I don't like the tool. I really do like the tool. I think an addition to it would be to add in a place for us to verify the scoring that we gave. So that's all. Thanks.
Michelle?
So I can chime in briefly from Northern, although I will admit I have home renovations going on right now, and they're not sledgehammering at this moment, but they might start any minute. So if I have to mute, I'm apologizing now. So Northern has been using the CPAS now for, this is our second semester. Last semester's feedback was resoundingly very positive. I will say one challenge that we were not anticipating, but we're going to have to figure out how to work through this summer before we start again in the fall, is that our student teachers are geographically very spread out. And so to add in-person consensus meetings is to add time to our supervisors for travel, but also financially add to the budget for our department in terms of mileage reimbursements. And I don't know that I fully understood going into the pilot financially what that would cost the department. And so I know Joe and I have had this conversation a little bit already about how do we do that differently next year? Do we ask the midterm meeting to happen as part of an observation? So it's one trip for two purposes. Do we try doing the consensus meeting on Zoom and see if Zoom is a good workaround? So there's ways that I think we can ease that financial burden on the department, because the feedback from everyone at NMU, with a few exceptions, is that absolutely they want to keep going with the CPAS. They love it. They really benefit from the conversations and the reflections. So I think the benefits far outweigh the challenges, and the challenges are something we'll dig into this summer, and as we try to figure that out.
Hey, Laura, this is Sally. This is Sally one more time. Sorry, Gail. Let me just throw this in as a response to that one. We did our consensus meeting via Zoom in our post-conference. We meet with the mentor teacher and the student teacher as a post-conference Zoom anyway. So that's not a this is as face-to-face as we got. And we did the consensus there, so that worked out really well. So that might be a good workaround for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep, Sally, I was just going to echo the same thing. Yeah, that we did it virtually and it worked out really well.
I'll just speak as an institution that doesn't use CPAS, and we've done this for years. That is, we always combine, well, almost always combine an observation with an instrument we've developed. We have a consensus meeting. We usually combine it with an observation. It depends again on the distance, but we've also done it face-to-face and on Zoom, and we see no real differences. And like I said, we've done it for years that way. So it's not a CPAS problem. That is and I wouldn't even call it a workaround. It is, it's sort of built into the system, and that's what everybody feels supported in various ways. We're so used to Zoom also that I don't think that I can imagine that if there's a particularly difficult situation, that face-to-face is better. But you usually know that's going to happen. That's not a surprise, right? So you can plan for that. But yeah, so I don't think it's a unique thing to CPAS. It's just, what you have to work out.
Jennifer, I didn't know if you had more to add with your experience, or if Jillian, if anything from Central to add on to the discussion.
I can add on the CMU side that we're having some of those same conversations that Laura mentioned specific to mileage, because we too place our students in a large geographical region. We place all across the state. So while we do have coordinators that live in various regions, they still drive quite a ways. And so considering if we have room to look at compensation, to see if we have room to look at increasing the number of visits. We did this year increase the number of visits that we traditionally paid for. Last year, we reimbursed for 3 face-to-face visits. This year we did 4. So that they basically had 1 meeting that they either had to double up, or 1 meeting that they could do virtual, and then the rest was compensated. So that's what we did. The other big thing that we've had some of our coordinators ask for is hard paper copies of materials to give to cooperating teachers. And that I've just been a hard no on. That too many of our PK-12 partners are going paperless or paper reduced, that we need to follow suit. And that much paper is just not sustainable when we have about 400 cooperating teachers we work with in a year. So that's been the other thing.
I haven't heard anybody say this yet. And although I haven't been a user of CPAS, we've had discussions at the departmental level. One of our concerns is that CPAST is done twice, and yet there needs to be some sort of feedback loop for the students in the other times. I know some institutions have a homegrown thing that they use, but maybe there needs to be some across the board. If you're going to use CPAST, these are your options for the other providing feedback opportunities.
Hey, Jason, is Joe Lubig, NMU, is longtime listener, first time caller. Okay, thanks for the humor. All right. So has the CPAST been used with graduate programs, or was it primarily undergrad post-bac?
I believe all our piloters were using it at the undergraduate level.
Okay. I'm just
I am not aware of, like, in my discussions with Ohio State University, and they've been kind of limited, but there's never been a reference to graduate students. So I don't know if Ohio State would view it as sort of validated for use with graduate students, but I guess it depends on how the graduate student is set up. I've been talking to them more about whether, like, would they consider the CPAST a valid tool for use with like alternative route programs? But I haven't had those, their thoughts about how it fits with graduate students.
okay. So
And Tammy's
thanks.
chimed in there in the chat, because I know I think Tammy was at Ohio State before, if I remember correctly. So Tammy's very familiar with the CPAST and sort of Ohio State's
Yes.
take on it.
Yes, sorry, Jason. I was.
Yeah.
It is when the instrument was created, it was created with both undergraduate teacher certification programs and MED graduate teacher certification programs.
Yeah, Tammy, I mean, it's just really interesting, right? With some of us have grad programs that lead to initial cert, but also like our ed admin folks or people adding certifications who,
Sure.
Like the LD reading specialist, you guys, school guidance counselor. The questions on the survey, Jason, are really interesting in that like it has all that mentoring with it. I mean, as we read the information you shared with the pilot, around the pilot, and then today's presentation, it's also doing kind of that meta thing, like our candidates are leading a small group discussion in the debriefing. They're doing like it's those other things, but I just love the questions that were asked about it because it gets to like the mentoring of, but thanks, making us think of some things. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to Karen, you had a comment in the chat there. So I think mid-January was the deadline where everyone had to submit their scores to Ohio State University. And my understanding, I don't know if folks have received their scores back yet, but my understanding is, yeah, so they received their aggregate scores back, and they also received scores for sort of to get a baseline about what all the other institutions who are using CPAS, what they're at. So you have some sort of benchmark that you can use to see how you're doing. I don't know, did folks get their scores back yet from Ohio State University? Any comparisons? Yeah, okay. I don't know. I want to say they might do that at the end of the year, but I'm not certain on that.
So I guess my question is because our concern is we use Anthology to like pull reports, disaggregate data. Like, can we put that into our system too, as well as report it out to Ohio State?
Yeah, I'll defer to how some of the others have did it, but my understanding is Ohio State has a template, so you can pull it out however you want. You just might need some formatting to get it into OSU's template. I know there were some discussions in our meetings about from the piloters about how to sort of sync those two up. I don't know if it was too burdensome for folks or how easy they felt it was to get into that template form for OSU. Or maybe it was your data person did it, so you need to check with your data person about how easy it was.
So I did for Jennifer Heitzler from Siena Heights, and I thought the data input for the OSU system was pretty straightforward, although I haven't received any information back. So I didn't I can't see other heads nodding if anybody else got their stuff back, but I haven't received anything yet.
I'd like to go, can I step back for just a minute and go to what Diane was talking about with just having 2 observations? Has that been Gail, you were saying that you've used it for a long time. Has that been an impact for anybody else? Only having 2 observations during their whole student teaching?
Oh,
Or,
we do more than that. So
okay, well, and we do as well. I mean, the state requires 4. And we actually have 5. So with the CPAST, if we're switching to that, is that going to be something that changes with the MDE? Is that something that's all that we have to report, but we're expected to do more, et cetera, et cetera? That's just a thought-provoking question there.
And Sally, I want to piggyback too and ask Gail, does Michigan State use the CPAST for all observations? That's
no,
one thing. And then
very clear, we do not. We are not a CPAT. We have our own that we've developed and we've redeveloped, so we don't use CPAT.
Okay, that's what I thought you said.
Yeah, we've got one we've got one that's validated and all of that. So we like what we have, and it's aligned with our redesign program also. So
sure. In full disclosure, Sally and I used the CPAS last semester, and we had pretty strong candidates that we were using with the pilot. So we haven't had a weak candidate yet, and I'm not sure. I'm confident in the tool itself. I think that it has room for to help struggling candidates grow, but we just haven't had that experience yet.
Jason, coming back too, I'm not sure that, I mean, I know you're wanting just feedback right now, but having only done it for a semester, we're not ready to, excuse me, to say yes or no, that this is something that we're going to use forever. And we would definitely need to have more because like Gail said, we have ours in place. It's aligned to everything, and it would be a lot of change internally for us to do. So, and I know change is hard. So this is the first step.
Yeah, and I think everyone is still going to use it in the spring, summer, from my understanding, from feedback from folks. And we have 3 more EPIs who are interested in piloting it in the fall there. So yeah, so we're certainly still in a gathering information phase on everything.
So I just want to clarify real quick, this is Catherine. The CPAST is not intended to be used for every single student teaching observation. So it's intended to be used for a midterm and a final. And in between, when I used it, when I was a supervisor, I used the language from the CPAST to help point my students to areas for improvement and areas of strength. And so those observations across student teaching, while they didn't do a formal full CPAS, we use that CPAS language often to help students understand exactly where they are and where they might consider going. So the observation feedback, it was used, but it wasn't a formal full CPAS, if that makes sense, Sally Ray. So think of it a little bit in that way. And then someone asked about Watermark, and yes, you can collect it through Watermark and then just download the data and copy and paste it and get it into the OU template. It's really simple.
Thanks, Catherine.
That's all I had on the CPAS, unless anyone had any other questions or comments, or did I miss anything in the chat? If not, I had a few other quick updates for folks. So we can go to the next slide. And yep, so just a reminder on Title II, right? So if you haven't finished your data collection worksheet, just a reminder those are due today. ES told me they had a couple rejections still in the system. So if your worksheet was rejected, I sent folks an email yesterday, but just a reminder those are due by the end of today. And ES has a help desk that can help you out if you're trying to figure out why it was rejected. I have not heard when the main report window will open up this spring, but last year it opened up from March 2nd it was open March 2nd to May 19th. So it probably should be open in roughly a month there if they're sort of on schedule there. So that should be opening soon as well. I think I had one more slide on the survey. Yep. So fall winter surveys are closing on February 11th. So send out any final reminders that you can to your candidates, supervisors, and cooperating teachers to please take the survey if they have not done so already. Reminder again, you have the dashboard to track down who has taken the survey. And then the spring summer survey. So tentatively, we have that scheduled for rostering to begin on February 19th. I have a target date of March 13th, the Wednesday, to get everything distributed, and then that will close on June 9th. So quick survey reminder, I think that's all I had. Yep, that's all on my end.
Great, thank you so much. As always, we encourage you to follow us on our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, X is also there, and subscribe to our Educationally Speaking newsletter. It goes out once a month, provides lots of good updates, goes to every certified teacher in the state. And utilize that hashtag Proud Michigan Educator, hashtag PME, for any social media posts that you have related to the excellent work that your teams are doing, as well as your candidates and graduates. All right, and so open up for some questions and answers. We've got lots of time. When I was looking through, following along through the chat, Jennifer Heisler asked us about the stipend and the fellowship. We've heard no buzz about those programs being discontinued or defunded or anything like that. So as far as we know, there's no plans to stop with that program. I will note Treasury was having some interesting challenges. I'm sorry, My Student Aid in My Leap, because they're not in Treasury anymore. They were having some challenges, good challenges, I think, with the number of semesters that some people were becoming eligible for the stipend. So we know most people, the standard thinking, one semester of student teaching as defined by the parameters of our clinical experiences framework has been the norm. There more and more have 2 semesters, but they may have to borrow a little bit out of the fellowship money to cover more, as we have, I believe there was one candidate who was in their 4th semester of student teaching. And it's not because they were unsuccessful in previous semesters. That was the design of the program that they were in, because it was a very clinically rich program. Thank you for building such clinically rich programs. That's been one of our chief goals, and of shifting educator preparation in the state. And so seeing more and more of that and being able to support it from the state's end is a good problem to have. And we're very proud of that. Gail had posed some questions about the test fee reimbursement, and Bridget put in the link to our page with that. Key thing is first-time test takers during the current academic year. So or not academic year, current fiscal year, which kicked off October 1st. Really, October 2nd is the first date of the that testing window. So first-time test takers on any test for that. A good question here, Gail, back on the My Student Aid. State contact hasn't changed for the fellowship and the stipend. That still is the My Student Aid unit. So My Student Aid at michigan.gov remains operational. We know that MyLeap was going to retain the team structures that were in place from the different agencies and units and bureaus that were combined to bring that together for at least 6 months. And then we'll see what the next budget cycle brings in that regard. So it's all the same people. If you've talked to Maggie Polly, she's still doing her work there, but she just has a new email or a new tagline on her email. This is my leap instead of Treasury. Let's see. Are other questions in here? There were. Beth Kabitsky put in some clarification on dates of things that people were asking about for the Continuous Improvement Conference at Western, May 1 through 2, with DARTEP, of course, on the 3rd. The MACD Summer Retreat at NMU, June 10 through 12. Oh, go celebrate my brother's birthday up in Marquette. Sounds good to me. So those were some of the questions that came up. Let's see. Diane, if a student took and passed one of the new elementary tests last summer and this winter is taking another of the elementary tests, but for the first time, is that student eligible for reimbursement for this new test taken? Yes. Yeah, first time any test. It's a nice incentive too. If you had some, we've talked a lot about transitions of people if they were graduated from an old K-8 all subjects program and have been unsuccessful on test 103, that if you believe they demonstrate appropriate proficiency in the standards based on your clinical observations of them, then you could recommend them, transition them over to say a PK3 or 3.6, have them try the test. We're seeing greater success, which is opening up quality futures for these teacher candidates. And they'll never, they're taking that PK3 test or the 3.6 tests for the very first time, they can get that reimbursed. So that is a nice salve, I think, from the money that they've invested, of course, in 103. Jason, raise your hand.
Yeah, Sean, I'm not sure if this is a good time to switch gears or if you had some more thoughts to finish on that.
No, I think I've addressed all the questions that were here and questions that I think there's several there. So go right ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just pass on. So I did not put this into any of the PowerPoint slides, but I do have the tentative scores for the 2024 performance score. Everybody looks good. From what I can tell, it's still being validated. Kate's going to check my work and all that fun stuff, but it looks like everybody's in good shape for this reporting period. I will be sending out some more data to folks on Monday. I don't like sending data on Friday afternoon because I think it might get skipped over. So Monday morning, I'll get some data out to folks. I was able to find some more cooperating teachers in the survey that somehow got filtered out. So some of the state averages for those survey results have changed. And also the, since I initially released the results, folks have told me like this person shouldn't be in it, this person shouldn't be in it. So there was some filtering, cleaning of the data. So I'll get some final state average scores to folks. I'll get the placement data that I'm using out to you as well. So you can put your eyes on that. And then the educator effectiveness ratings, Anne Green does have that data, and she's, I did what I needed to do with it, but she's also tailoring it for distribution to you. And Anne said that will be out maybe mid to late February. She'll have that educator effectiveness data out to folks as well. So yeah, so just wanted to do a quick note on the performance score data.
Awesome. A couple questions came in. Laura at Western, can I please confirm what I just said? Yes, those who can't pass 103 can take either or both PK3 and 3.6. They're not limited to PK3. That's correct. You need to do your due diligence as an institution, evaluate, make sure that they, you believe that they have met the standards in these areas. And yeah, you can have them take either PK3 or 3.6 or both, and recommend them for either endorsement area in lieu of the old. And here's another very interesting question. Has there been any correlation studies done around how MTTC has impacted K-12 state test scores versus when the MTTC did not exist? No, MTTC has existed since 1992, so I don't. Pretty confident there hasn't been any kind of study of student outcomes then as compared to now, beyond what you can see in, say, NAEP longitudinal results, but no correlational work with teacher testing. It sounds like a dissertation topic, so if anybody is fishing for something to support one of your grad students, there you go. So other questions? Got extra time here before our next event.
Boy, I've never seen this group so quiet when they had the opportunity to hold Sean to the fire. I'm telling you.
I have a quick question. A district partner asked me yesterday if MDE was considering any reciprocity of teaching certification for people that had certification in another country. And I didn't know
All
how
the
to respond
time.
to that.
All the
Krista
time.
Reed.
All the time. We do it all the time.
Okay.
And it's now very clearly explicitly listed in law that we can do that. The language used to be a little fuzzy. It said another state. And we've had success in updating law to include tribes, Michigan federally recognized tribes, which is really exciting. And then we've been doing out of country and our foreign educators for years. So
great. Thank you.
Not always easy to get those transcripts, though, I will tell you that. And they have to go through a separate credential review process that is a little more detailed, and we don't do the evaluation of transcripts in another language. I just don't have that skill.
Right. Yeah.
I have a related question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a related question. Maybe it's sort of related, but because it is about international work, and we've had we've always had students who want to do a study abroad and see if that counts toward the clinical requirements of our program in particular, but sometimes it's coursework, and we sort of review those on we've always said no for the internship year. We have said yes for things like summer stuff, but we review each one based on a variety of criteria because they're all different, right? It's not just world language people who want to do this. And we have and that's going to become even more complicated because we're going to a 4-year program. We've gone to a 4-year program in elementary already. But I just want to clarify or confirm, because my stance has been that the onus is really on us as a program to approve or not approve those based on what we have promised in, that our students would reach in terms of benchmarks and assessments if they're in the country. And I assume that would still be true. That is, the onus is still on the certifying, the institution that's recommending them for certification. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct. To do that, I think we have. I know, without calling people out, we have some deans and representatives here who have experience with some pretty remote placements around the world, and have been able to might have some wisdom to share on that. But Joe Lubick,
Yep.
yes, there you go.
There you
Turn
go.
on his camera.
Yeah. So thanks, Sean and Krista. Yeah, NMU's been placing student teachers all over the world for, I would say, 50 or 60 years. And so we have 2 sites that are better established: Quito, Ecuador, and then Auckland, New Zealand. And then all the other placements we're doing just like we would a placement in Northern Lower Michigan, downstate, or in the UP, reaching out through our alumni network and in school networks. So Were there specific, I mean, we hold it all together, just kind of like, Gail was talking about Zoom sessions, to debrief, and we still hire an on-site supervisor, the cooperating teacher, like the system's the same. But I think our use of distance education, like ITV and those kinds of things, a long time ago to reach our rural sites, kind of gave us the confidence to do those types of things. Were there specific questions people wanted to ask?
Well, I'm more, yes, so my concern is that this is much more difficult to do when you don't have an established relationship with a cluster of people who are on board and know how to use the instruments that are like your instrument, right? Because we have to sort of say they've met, we have these assessments of progress instruments that we use that provide both feedback and a measure of whether they've reached certain benchmarks that are aligned with the standards across different parts of the program. And so the people who are overseeing all of this, I mean, I don't have within limits, depending on the time difference, I don't have a problem with the course stuff. It's more the clinical, assuring that the clinical experiences are parallel, not identical, because obviously context matters. And so that's why it's great for them to be over there, particularly if they're a world language person, or they want to teach in an overseas school, for example, a U.S. school overseas, or both. But sort of a singleton kind of thing with someone who just wants to go to Spain, right, and teach in a school, and there is maybe another university that's offering it, or they may be just a singleton. That makes me very nervous about, especially with a more condensed program. So, yeah.
Yeah, most of our placements, Gail, they're one-off placements. So it's somebody is interested in, Jody L wants to go to Finland. So she wants to explore her family history and get a placement. So the site agreement we would have with the school in Finland is, look, we need to know that they can teach the Michigan curriculum, that they meet the expectations in our evaluation tool, that they can pass the Michigan licensure exam so that we can recommend them for a teaching certificate in Michigan. So do you agree to do the evaluation tool training online? Here's the handbook. Here are our TAC meetings, Teacher Education Advisory Council meetings. Laura Kennedy has those set, once a month. We are checking in. I will be contacting you. And then the student teacher is part of the seminar, which we do online anyhow because of the in area for us is 13,000 square miles. So Laura, and others have that set up online. So we're feeling confident about it. And again, like our context is, it's just as difficult to get a placement in Green Bay for special ed, where we need to expand our network, as it is to get a placement in Khabarovsk, Russia, which we're not placing in anymore, but it's or Finland or New Zealand. It's the whole network. But we're finding, I know when I was in that role, the collegiality and the shared experiences for the supervisors and the cooperating teachers, that held everything together, right? We all had this is what's in common. But really the maturity of the candidates. So we interview them, like we do with all of them. This is a good placement for you, or it's not. Here's why. We don't think you need some more local support. We need to get to you quicker, those kinds of things. So yeah, it's all individually based, but most of ours, Gail, are one-off placements for overseas.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful.
Five or six a year. So
well, that's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to manage with different staff folks.
I popped just a couple things. This is kind of a nice opportunity to do my plug that I've been wanting to do. I just haven't had the time to write something up and put it in your updates. But I do work closely with Spain and Taiwan, and they both have, first of all, professional development for already certified teachers. Like and they have money. They're like, get them there and pay them to stay and learn the language and immerse them in the culture. They have it for K-12 students, so summer programming, which is pretty phenomenal. Again, they coordinate it and have money to support it. They both have international language academies, and the Taiwan program actually is linked to the U.S. federal program. It's called the National Security Language Initiative for Youth. So there's a whole bunch of things that are already going on along those lines. And the newest piece is that Taiwan can actually support student teacher placements. So thinking about how that might work, it could be just someone who's learning a language and becoming a Chinese language teacher here in Michigan and getting that certification, but it could also be bilingual or ESL, that type of a student. And Sarah Kate and I have talked about it. I was in Taiwan in November, so lucky to go and see their school. Just going and being a part of their school structure is an incredible learning opportunity. So let me know if you have questions, and if we can coordinate something and get your support, I would be happy to help.
Just as a plug for MSU, we do have a Chinese language. It's a sort of the reverse thing, right? That is, we have native speakers of Chinese who come here to become certified. It's sort of an alt-cert program, as some of you at MDE know, and work in our schools, largely in Chinese language immersion schools and such as public schools, and become certified. So they can stay here and teach Chinese if they'd like, or they can go back.
Yeah. And I've worked with your group, Gail, many times to try and help support them and get them into the schools.
Yeah, Nancy. Yeah, and we're expanding to Spanish this year. So we're pretty excited.
All right.
Beth was asking if we have issues or challenges implementing the core teaching practices based on cultural norms. I'd say no more than we may have with the local teacher who is, this is how we do things in our classroom, right? And so we're, like all of you, we're pretty good at it's a have to, so blame us. My program said, you know, I like blaming Laura, so Dr. Kennedy said I have to, or I can't pass. And so that seems to resolve things. Or how can you break it down? Maybe it's not during class, maybe it's an after school kind of thing, and students are opting in to build some confidence in the cooperating teacher, but not at a higher rate, Beth, than if it was local. Yeah.
So I know we're going to have our visitors in about 7 minutes, and I'm wondering if anybody else is like me and would appreciate an opportunity to stand up, move around, get a fresh cup of coffee or something, and we'll convene back at 10:15. And thank you so much, MDE.
Welcome. See you in a bit.
Well, I think we're ready to start with our Teachers of the Year. And I think somebody from MDE is moderating at this point. So if you would step right in and let's get going.
Yeah, we have Jennifer Roble here to
Hi, sorry, I was on
moderate,
mute.
introduce. Oh, good deal. There you go.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Roble. I'm a manager in the Office of Educator Excellence, and I oversee the Teacher of the Year and Regional Teacher of the Year programs. And we want to thank you again for having us here. It's always a great conversation. And this is a very lively cohort this year. And I mean that in the best way. They are so passionate about this profession. And I know that they look forward to speaking with you today. We have Dr. Gina Pepin with us, and she is a reading teacher at Lemmer Elementary in Escanaba Area Public Schools. And Stephanie Nielsen, she's a kindergarten teacher in Grand Rapids Public Schools. Jennifer Sinkmajor, she's a 4th grade teacher at Yale Elementary and Yale Public Schools. Nicole Miner, she's a math teacher at Lansing Eastern High School here in Lansing. And Vanessa Robert, she's a kindergarten teacher at Canton Charter Academy. And our Teacher of the Year, Candace Jackson, she is a 3rd grade teacher at Mann Learning Community in DPSCD. And what I would like to do, if it's okay with everyone here, is just start to ask them questions. And if any of you have questions for them on what they respond with, or just in general questions, please jump right in. I can only see a few of you. Dr. Bazzi, if you see a question, or if someone raises their hand, if you could let me know, I would appreciate that. First, I want to say, side note, we are in the process of selecting a 4-year institution and hopefully a baseball team for my son. He has chosen the 4-year route and to hopefully play baseball. And the institutions that we've visited or have been in contact with have been phenomenal, from admissions all the way up and back down. So I just wanted to give a huge shout out to you. This is a new territory for us. And so it's very comforting and very calming when we have very interested people when we go and visit it. So thank you very much. Okay, so to the 6 that we have with us today out of the 10, the first question that I'd like to share is, what do you believe new teachers need to know coming into the classroom? And all of you can answer, or one of you can answer, and then we'll just feed off of each other like that. So what do you believe new teachers need to know coming into the classroom?
I'll go. I feel that they really need to go in with a growth mindset. I think that using your mentor and listening to your grade level team to an extent of just kind of getting the layout of the school and understanding the relationships that are built in the school. And I think once we have that growth mindset of, I'm in a creator mode, I'm going to build that relationship with my students and the staff around me with the capacity of wanting to learn, I feel that that would open up more doors and have more of a less of like a, oh, my room's going to be the greatest, right? I am going to lead in this classroom and it's going to be different from what I had. So it's going to be rainbows and sunshine. So I think if we take off that lens and we really have the perspective of this is what could happen and be real about it, then, we might have more teachers staying rather than having that that feel of defeat. So
Thank you, Vanessa. Go ahead, Jennifer. You're muted.
There we go. Sorry. I know that I went into education and like all of us, we want to make a big difference to kids. And so like Vanessa said, I often felt defeated when I wasn't making the difference that I wanted to make. And when I finally realized that I can't save all of my kids, it is my job to serve them. And the difference between the few letters in those words, I think kept me from burning out and just carrying everything so heavily to really giving me that drive and that desire. Like, we are all part of this huge puzzle. The bus driver is, the crossing guard is, the office ladies are, the custodian. We're all part of this huge puzzle, and I am one of the pieces. And so, so if I serve each of my kids every day to the best of my ability, I feel a little less desperate on those days when I'm like, did I reach anybody? Did I reach that kid? And so for me, the difference between those two words, I think, kept me in the field and kept me passionate.
Thank you. Anyone else on this? Oh, Candace, go ahead. Hello.
Hi. Kind of piggybacking on what Vanessa said when she was talking about growth mindset, one of the things she said was about the importance of building those positive relationships. And that's always the first piece of advice that I give new teachers. I let them know that children, they don't know how much, or they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's important to build the relationships with the students and the parents and your colleagues and all of that, because it helps create this supportive and respectful environment where the children can thrive. And getting the parents on board is really imperative, because if you get the parents on board, you'll get better attendance. They'll help the kids with the homework. When you have a behavior concern, you can reach out to that parents and they'll be supportive. So there's a plethora of reasons why you need to get those parents on board. So I think that one of the things, like I said, is that I tell my teachers when I talk to them is building those relationships first before you even dig into the curriculum. Always is my first thing that I do.
Dina?
Thanks. I was just going to add something that about there's a lot of experts coming into the buildings that sometimes we focus on stakeholders such as parents and family and other educators, but tapping into resources like those multidisciplinary team members, like your occupational therapist, your physical therapist, your social worker, we really struggled with in our intervention and groups stamina with students. They were literally like deflating like tires because they just don't have the stamina to do anything. And so as our multidisciplinary team, we met and we came up with some vision tracking, like column jumps that the students do for literally 30 seconds, or ran, rapid automative things. And these people are also part of your team as a teacher. And I think being able to tie in other experts to be a part of your support system is really, really important, because they can help make you be a better educator as well. So always reaching out to everybody, broad and wide.
Thank you. Nicole or Stephanie? Stephanie, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, just to add on to, I think, what everybody's saying here, I'd say the two things that I felt least prepared for coming into teaching was one, parent relationships. We talk a lot about how to communicate with families, how we make newsletters, and what's going to be the best approach. But I think that was one of my biggest challenges, was connecting with families, especially in challenging situations. So just providing more ideas and strategies for connecting with families. And then two, I didn't feel prepared enough to walk into like IEP meetings or child study meetings. I felt like I was just doing it for the first time, my first year, and I was able to find the right resources and the right people to talk to figure it out. But that's just one area that I didn't quite feel prepared for.
And for me, as a secondary teacher, something that I did my first year, tried to grade and look at everything. And that was very difficult. So don't go into don't have the mindset of everything I give to them to do, I have to grade it. Give them some responsibility of checking their own work and then going over things that they have questions on. Because I was like looking at everything and trying to grade it all, and I got burned out fairly quickly and had to kind of revamp and readjust and look at things, and started being very strategic about what I did actually grade. So just keeping that in mind, because you have over 100 students, you can't look at everything. And the parent piece, again, with that many students, trying to figure out ways to give the positive feedback to parents at the beginning of the year, and making sure I did positive communication throughout the year, so that if I did have a behavioral issue, that wasn't the first time I talked with a parent.
Perfect. Thank you. And now let's kind of flip the script on that. And some of you talked about, OT and PT and that kind of thing. How can the EPPs better prepare their teacher candidates? But then like a subsection of that question, maybe a follow-up, is how should they work with general ed teachers and special ed teachers to work together on 504s and IEPs, and the differences between modifications and accommodations. So how could they prepare teacher candidates better, but then, like go the special ed lens, general ed lens as well? Go ahead, Gina.
I was just going to say that Escanaba Schools does such a beautiful job with this, in the sense that their secondary, middle school, and high school, they co-teach. So they don't necessarily have a pullout time like we do more so in the elementary, but there is very strategically placed, students in classes, and these general ed and special education teacher co-teach together. And I know some other school districts are rocking this out beautifully, but I think it's a pretty powerful way of that collaborative piece where there's always open and clear communication. There's a beautiful support, student support team. I think maybe just helping new teachers get a sense of what that would feel like. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What could it possibly be in a school district in an urban area or a rural area? I think those aspects also may need to be tailored by that location as well. But I think that sometimes a lot of people are not willing to co-teach with somebody else, but it can be such a powerful advantage for students and teachers as well.
And parents and guardians, have everyone involved. Go ahead, Vanessa.
I remember when I was in my student teaching program, we had to do a case study on one student. I think that it would be beneficial if they did, because you have to, if you see something, you got to recommend, and you have to go through the process of documenting. And what does that documentation look like? And how long are you doing that for? I think that if they had a case study where they're using the same format that the school is providing, that the teachers have to fill out, I think if they have that exposure and they have to go through that process, it would be more beneficial for them. And it kind of goes in alignment with the accommodation trackers. What does that look like? How are you going to apply that? And talking with their mentor teacher of how to do that daily, and how does that look like with you actually tracking it and them practicing, right? So they get like a copy of the accommodation tracker and they have to fill it out themselves. Because I think too much, and I know I had the fear of when I was in my first meetings for IEPs, they would ask me for feedback as far as, how are they doing with their behavior? What are they doing with their occupational therapy in class? How are you making that? And I was so afraid to speak up because I wasn't really sure exactly how to identify or how to speak to the parent. So I think having that practice and then being inside those IEP meetings or the 504 meetings would be beneficial for them.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I'll just second that. I think it's really important for them to sit in on child study meetings, IEP meetings, 504 meetings. I don't remember it being a requirement. It's been a while since I went through my undergrad, so I don't know if it's a requirement now. I don't believe it has been for any interns that I've had recently in my area, but just requiring, like Vanessa said, that practice, that hands-on real-time experience.
And also helping the gen ed teacher, it would be helpful if they knew like how to look at an IEP, how to pick out the information that they need, because it's a fairly long document, and having to read through and not knowing what information you need to make sure you're paying attention to as the gen ed classroom teacher would be helpful. So that way, if they are asked to go to an IEP, they can kind of pay attention to, they can give feedback that would be beneficial for the student and would be helpful during the IEP.
Piggybacking on what Jennifer and Stephanie said, I think I might have taken one special education course in undergrad, and I felt underprepared when it came out because I wasn't well-versed on IEPs and 504s and stuff. So I think that providing training to general ed teachers, well, I would say providing more training is necessary, because now that we have the least restrictive environment and the children are coming into the classroom and we're mainstreaming, we need to know the strategies, how to accommodate the abilities and the challenges in the classroom. And if we didn't go into special education, we may not be well versed on that. So I think providing more requirements or requiring more requirements for general education teachers to learn these skills is important, because otherwise we're not prepared when we do have to do the IEP or the 504 or adapt. We all talked about like differentiating during undergraduate, but I don't think that that was like fully encompassing of dealing with all of the neurodivergent learners that we may encounter if they're coming into our class as mainstreaming or in the least restrictive environment.
I don't think that differentiation was really talked about in my undergrad. So Candace, as you're talking about that, maybe it was like a quick moment in a chapter or something like that, but it was not something we really addressed. And especially now in our educational environment, we don't just have kids with IEPs. When I started, we didn't have kids with 504s. So we have lots of needs we're meeting. And then we also have the kids that are not identified under either of those that need accommodations or differentiation. And so I think addressing differentiation. And for me also, you know, I've had years where, you know, I've got 7 students with IEPs and another 6 with 504s. And then how do I manage, like, how do I keep track of who has a requirement that they test in a different location, or who has the accommodation that I'm reading aloud? So I've played around over years of how do I organize that information so it's easy for me to use. And some years I can just look at them quick and go, yep, that's a test read, that's a test read. But other times, like, I need a different organizational structure. So I think the more your students are exposed to the kinds of accommodations that are typical in 504s and in IEPs, and have some different strategies already, like have a little toolkit already. I know some ideas of how I can do this, but then thinking about how to manage all of that information, because they are legally required to follow those, and it can be overwhelming to keep track of all of it.
Can I add one more thing, Jen? I was just gonna say, right off of what you just mentioned, Jennifer, is that I've served in the role of a university supervisor, and a lot of new teachers are just hesitant to think that they're gonna get in trouble, in a sense, if they use accommodations for students that don't have legally documented accommodations. So I think just building that practice of absolutely do it. This is how you keep track of it. So then when you meet with a multidisciplinary team or student study team, you have that data that shows this is what has worked. This is what I tried and it didn't work, type of thing. And building that confidence and that awareness that that is just part of practice.
Well, and I think that's also a good thing to keep track of too, Gina, is if when you go to meet with the parents and the guardians, you have that documentation to show. Maybe they're seeing it, but they don't know how to talk to you, or you're seeing it and you don't know how to talk to them. So moving away from special ed a little bit, what else could EPPs do to better prepare their candidates? Anything else?
I'll just say as much classroom and face-to-face time with students and in school buildings as possible, interviewing school staff, you know, whether it be the principal or the nutrition staff or the custodian, that they just really get exposed to all the different pieces and parts. Like I think Jennifer was talking about all the different, you know, pieces of the puzzle that make our schools operate, and that we do it early on in their program as well, that we're not just waiting to the end of the program to get them in school buildings, but it's happening early on.
First of all, I think they're doing an amazing job and continue to adapt to the needs of, you know, the population and communities across the state. But one thing that I've noticed with some folks that have come is just an overview of maybe of common assessments that are used in schools, right? So we use NWA here, and just the fact that if you administer NWA and it's preset or defaulted to the, you know, 4 weeks of instruction, and you give it in week 2, that you know, the test validity is going to be off. And we've run into a lot of issues with that. And of course, you know, there's always the teacher evaluation data that's kind of that new teachers are always really in fear of. So maybe just understanding some of those overview pieces of assessments, like these are common assessments used in school districts, getting to know just what makes them valid, what makes them reliable, without getting into the depth of it, because I know that can be more of a master's level, but just knowing that tests are designed sometimes in different ways. And what does that test tell you? Like Acadians and Dibbles would tell us more one thing and NWA tells you another thing. So what do those outcomes tell you? Maybe just an overview of assessments. Assessments is a lot, but some way to maybe just look at collecting data across the state. What are some common assessments that are going to be used in, you know, in a K through 12 classroom? I think that's really important, and take some of that stress off of the evaluation data as well.
Anyone else?
I know we're going to talk about that in our session, so I feel like they're kind of dabbling in. I don't want to like speak on a topic, but is having maybe and I agree with Gina, by the way. You guys have done an amazing job of creating this, you know, space for students who are geared towards and learning from because back then I had to learn a plethora of everything, and I'm like, I'm not going to even use a lot of this. So now the curriculum is fitting to that of the classroom. So thank you so much for modifying that, so then that way we are having a reality of what does a classroom look like in truth for your students and parents. But so we spoke about, my principal and I were talking about having maybe a cohort of, you know, the new teachers once they graduate. And you know, some people have the innate gift to be able to manage their students and build that relationship right away. But then there are some teachers that don't have that right away, and they need professional development focused in on what does your classroom look like? What is a mobility? What is a mobility? What does it look like as far as, you know, your routines and procedures? Are they easily accessible? And I don't think that those pieces are really fitting until they get into it, and then they're kind of like in chaos mode. So I think having those cohort of teachers going to series of professional development that are focused in on goals that they can attain within that month, right? So like talking to a parent in confrontation, like their student or their child did something that was not okay. How do you speak to that parent? I was deathly afraid of that. And sometimes I misspoke. And so even words can mean a lot more and destroy a relationship with the parents very quickly. And it's very hard to get back onto that train. So I think having a series of professional develops within that year that they would have to go to would be beneficial. So that's something to think about.
Thank you.
And if I
Jennifer?
could piggyback off,
Yep, go ahead.
If I could piggyback off of something that Vanessa said early on, and Stephanie, in terms of, you know, we have so much learning in our preparatory, in our preparation programs, but it doesn't always feel meaningful when we're not in the throes of it. And then we get in the classroom and our hair's on fire, right? And so, so to make it meaningful, like the more you can get them into classrooms so that they see teachers managing behavior, so that they see how teachers are organizing their paperwork, so they see the networking that happens within a building. I mean, we do it as classroom teachers. Everything we do is supposed to, how do we make meaning? How do we make the connection? How do we make it meaningful to kids? And I think the same, the more we can get our people who are training to be teachers into the classroom to make meaning of the book learning and the discussion learning they're doing and those case studies they're reading, all those things, the more I think they can make those connections and feel more prepared.
Okay, let's talk about one of the many of thousands that they're doing well and that you cherished coming out of your program and that you continue to work with and hone that skill on. What is one great thing that they do to prepare a teacher going into their classroom? Go ahead, Vanessa.
I don't know when to go. We're just so with my experience with the student teachers that I have had or pre-student teaching, you know, they're very excited to be in the classroom and to build those relationships. And they had actually a good grasp of what a formative assessment versus a summative assessment looks like. And I know they were only supposed to observe, but I kind of just forced them into, hey, you gotta try it. Just try it with the group. And so they were really they communicated clearly. They understood their audience. They were very aware of what student didn't understand it and what steps to take next. So that was my experience with that. And so I felt like the colleges are preparing them for the what ifs, and they have a better grasp of, you know, their lesson planning and things like that. So what is the goal, what's the outcome, and what do you want to get from it? So I really appreciated that, just because it's one less thing that they have to be managing and trying to figure out for their day-to-day job. Sorry, I'm like having a moment.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think that one thing that schools are doing that's a lot different than when I was in school and a lot of the other Artoids were in school is there's a bigger emphasis on like inclusivity and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So teachers nowadays are coming out with more resources and skills on how to deal with children who have different cultures and genders and identities. And that's something that I know me personally, I didn't get. And so I would say, when I was coming out, a lot of teachers kind of had the mentality, you know, well, I don't see color or whatever like that. But when an educator says they don't see color or they don't see gender or they don't see whatever, they're choosing to ignore that student's individuality and what makes that student special. So I appreciate that younger teachers who are coming into the field of education, they have more experience, more knowledge, and they're more prepared to deal with these things. Like they're more, I don't know, they're a lot cooler than we were when we came out of school. And, you know, I wish that the teachers that I had when I was younger had had that kind of training to have made me feel like I was respected and valued and appreciated in the classroom. So that is one thing that I would say that teacher preparation programs are doing very well right now.
Perfect. Well said. Thank you. What has been, oh, sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
That's okay. I'm agreeing both with Vanessa and Candace. I've worked with interns from Ferris, Grand Valley, and Cornerstone University, and they all just seem to have a good grasp on different types of lessons like Vanessa was talking about. And I agree with Candace, our upcoming teachers are much cooler. So, and then also, oh, see, now I got focused on what they said and I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I just wanted to say that they really, any intern I've had in the last few years, they just come in with lots of initiative. They just take initiative. And I appreciate that. It seems like it's been talked a lot about in programs and classes that when you go into classrooms, you know, you're there to support and help and just be ready to take on anything that needs to be done. So I appreciate that.
Perfect. So going back to your in-service that long ago, keep going back, keep going, almost there. Okay. What was the most valuable professional learning that you engaged in? Go ahead.
I feel like I keep going first, guys. Sorry. Capturing kids' hearts was a very good professional development that kind of opened my eyes and perspectives of treating your students like they're your family, right? So like my first year, it's a lot about what you know, but sometimes your upbringing comes in and it bleeds through a little bit. You know, so my mom was very, you know, very strict and so she there wasn't a lot of love. So it's like, you know, for me, I was just like there and I was teaching third grade and I was like, thanks. I had a lot of missing pieces. And I feel like the Capturing with Kids Hearts professional development and the pieces we even had, I had gone to a professional development for champs as well. And so it was just very eye-opening and really brought me back to earth a little bit and said, oh, you do have a heart. You can say, I love you. You can give hugs. It's those types of things that your students need. And I felt like that was a very good component.
So Vanessa, I think you went first because you're probably the youngest, so you can remember what happened in undergraduate studies, because it was a million years ago for me. That's my contribution to this question.
Mine was 1.5 million years ago, so you didn't go back far enough, Jennifer. I would say the most powerful professional learning that I've ever experienced is the Kagan cooperative learning. And I was able to do that over the course of a week in the summer. So we spent a lot of time, but the Kagan cooperative learning structures are all about accountability, but doing it in a fun way, in a connected way, helping your students connect with each other and with content. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of creativity and flexibility. I felt like it covered everything. And it is an expensive PD, but it was absolutely, I would go do it again in a heartbeat, just to refresh. So that was by far the best PD I've ever had.
Go ahead, Gina.
I was just going to say 1 million years ago, and this still holds true today, is for me wasn't a specific training or professional development, but it was really that time during or after where there was time to collaborate and problem solve and think about like implementation processes and really like, how can we make this work? And of course, if it was any make and takes, more than theoretical pieces, I think that that's always really powerful. But I think time to collaborate vertically and horizontally was always the most important for me. And it's still true. That's still so valuable today.
Well,
And
mine
so-
wasn't. Oh, sorry.
I was just, can I really fast? So
No, go
when
ahead.
I would leave PD though, I would like leave and I'd run back to school and be like, I'm going to implement this now. And, like without having that time to process and think and plan. And so, so I think you're right. That collaboration is crazy important because otherwise you throw things at the wall because you're so excited, but it doesn't necessarily stick because you haven't had the processing and planning. Sorry, Nicole, you're up.
Oh, you're fine. Mine isn't necessarily from like when I started teaching, but one PD that does stick out and it stays with me is I went to a PD with my co-teacher and we were able to collaborate and talk about how to plan together for our co-taught class and the modifications and accommodations that we can put into place so that our students can access the content. It was valuable because not only was it for our students with IEPs, we also talked about, well, this can work for our students with IEPs, but let's do this strategy for our students who may have lower skills, and we just need to get them up so that they're with the rest of the class. So that was a very valuable PD for us because we were able to work together and we didn't really have that time before we were able to go there and then bring it back to school and implement it.
Perfect. Okay, let's talk about home life work balance. How do you maintain a healthy one? And what are your self-care routines? What would you tell a new teacher that they need to do or should do or will like to do? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Well, for a long time, I didn't have any self-care routines. I was married to my job. And in all honesty, if I hadn't made a change, like I don't know that I'd be where I am today. I don't know I would still be in a happy marriage. I don't know that I would still have the passion that I have. And I think a lot of us go into this because we have these huge hearts and we want to save the world. We have to serve the world, but we want to save it. And so, so it took me a long time to get to that point. To me, one of the most important things was to cultivate an interest or spend time doing something that is completely not school related. So when as an older teacher, I started to learn a martial art with my family, completely unrelated to teaching, but boy, did it help me become a better teacher because I was a learner of something new. And then after several years of doing that, I learned to play a musical instrument. Like those are things that are brand new to me and make me think super differently and set down all of my school thinking. And they also feed my soul. Like they're good for me physically, they're good for me mentally and emotionally. And so having some sort of a hobby or a time outside of school, it's completely non-school related, I think has helped me tremendously. And then I play music in my classroom before and after school quite often as a little thing just to get my brain up and pumping and awake and alive and really joyful. And that's just a tiny little self-care thing. And then last but not least, drink more water. Always drink more water than you think you need because we don't do it often as teachers because we can never get a bathroom break, but we need it. So that's a silly little thing.
Candace, thank you, Jennifer.
So I was going to say for me this year, especially trying to balance the MTOY duties, the classroom duties, and then being a mom, I had to learn the art of saying no without feeling like I had to justify it all the time. I am my principal's right-hand man, or I guess right woman man, or however you want to put it, because I'm not a man, but she depends on me a lot. And typically I would shut the building down with her and I'd stay late and I'd work on the weekends and I'd work after work because, like Jennifer said, you want to do it all. And I had to learn to create healthy boundaries and say, no, I'm sorry, I can't because I have to X, Y, and Z. And it's like a balance between, well, you're only going to be teacher of the year once, but then my son's only going to be a senior once. And, I have to carve out time for the things that I have to do everywhere. And this year, I think, especially being more busy than I've ever been, I had to learn how to set boundaries and be able to say no when it's necessary. No, I cannot do that. And I haven't found the time to really go to yoga or do any of the self-care things, but I think carving out that time for my family and, having the boundaries where on Wednesdays, no, I can't do anything extra. On Saturdays, that day is devoted to my children. That has really helped me. And I'm hoping that I can continue that because life goes on when you don't do everything. They find other ways to get it done. I don't have to lead every program or do every professional development in my building, and life goes on and the show goes on and everyone is fine, even if you don't do everything.
Well said. I'm learning that myself, Candace. Vanessa, go ahead.
So I think for the first year teachers and even going up to your third year is setting a goal for yourself that you are going to leave 2 times a week at the whatever time your school gets out. You wrap up your stuff, do what you need to do, and then you leave. And if it makes you feel better to take your bag with you, do it. But when you get home, you find your you time. I think there's such a big transition between you're working very hard towards something, you graduate, you're getting your job, and then there's this like, oh, I'm so excited, I'm an adult now, or I'm starting this new chapter now. And so many things happen within your first year. And like for me, I got a new house and I was starting to be a real adult in my mind. And so I think finding your new self in this new chapter is a huge moment, and setting that time aside with that 2 days out of the week, because being realistic to stick with more than that is just you're like Jennifer said, sometimes you feel married to your job. So someone gave me that piece of advice and I applied it my third year, and I wish I had done it sooner because you find your new self and it's very important. So
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah. So I I've seen teachers retire and then not know who they are. And that's been really hard to watch. I actually watched a teacher like just go through a really rough time and her life just kind of spiraled out of control and she ended up passing away. And it's a very like tragic situation. And ever since that happened, I've just like tried to really make it a point, like Jennifer was saying, to make sure that I have like my own life outside of school. So like I love reading, but I found myself, I'm always reading teacher related books. Then I had to set a goal, like Vanessa said, where no, I'm going to read like 5 books a year that are not related to education at all. You have to set those boundaries. And also that with technology now, we're just pinged constantly, emails, texts, apps that can just constantly be in communication with us, and finding ways to shut that off and saying, nope, from this time to this time, I'm not responding to anything work related. And then I talked to my interns about, and it helps in their teacher presence as well when they're in front of the students, that they are Miss whoever, Miss Nielsen, when I'm in front of my students. And when I walk out those doors, I'm Stephanie now. And something I did early on, which is also kind of a silly thing, but I was having a hard time turning it on and off. So I'd actually change my clothes when I got home. So I just felt like I'm taking off my uniform, I'm putting all of that aside, and it helped. So.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we have about 4 minutes left, if I'm correct, and I don't want to.
That's correct. In 4 minutes, we'll be going to breakout sessions.
Okay.
Thank you for being so aware of the time.
Not my first rodeo. I've been yelled at before for this, so I'm very cognizant of that.
Jennifer, we can, if you have another question, because there's only one round of the breakout sessions, and so we have until 12. So if you need a few more minutes here, that should be
okay. Yeah, I just have one more question that I think everyone would be helpful. What supports would you like to see the EPPs give to their candidates seeking their first job or their first position? Would it be interview help, resume skills, admin, communication? What do you think?
I think that is being aware of the mission and vision of that district, and being aware of the jargon that they use. So it's different in different districts. And also knowing what is the appropriate question to ask. It's different right now. I see an evolution of new teachers coming in and like the interviews that we've had, but some of them are not aware of what questions to ask. Like they'll say, when can do you guys have vacation time? And I feel like those are not appropriate questions to ask at that moment. And so I think being much aware of like, what is your, medical insurance look like, things that they're really going to need to have, and your 401k, super important. Those are big questions to ask, and I don't get that. We haven't gotten that a lot, and I feel like those are really important adult questions. So
how about how to apply for a cert? What is MOEX? How to create a MOEX account? How to send transcripts. I'm being fed questions right now, just so everyone, so true transparency. How MTT scores are uploaded into MOEX. Status of your application. What does that mean? In adding an endorsement. Any adult questions like Vanessa kind of spoke to. Were these questions that you all knew starting out?
I was just sitting here thinking, wow, Jen, you just did it all for us. Like those are all, none of those are things that we talked about. I don't even know if MOEX existed back when I started. There wasn't even DARTEP when I started teaching, but so no, those are all amazing. And then I do think, Vanessa, I hadn't even thought about like the jargon of the school, but the most terrifying interview I ever sat in, I was a 25-year veteran, and I sat at a table and they just said, we're going to list a bunch of acronyms and some of them are real and some of them aren't. Tell me what you know about them. And they sat there and like 25 acronyms, some being made up. I mean, I felt like it was like a gotcha game, but knowing like the school that I'm interviewing with, what are some of the important initiatives that they are using, or programs that they're using. And then also I do think interview skills are important because you can't get into that job if you don't have good interview skills. So,
well, and also
conducting mock interviews.
You can't get into that job if you have a criminal conviction or a professional practice need. And that's one of the things that at the job fairs, we have our professional practice person sit in the booth with us. And we're in partnership with CMU on a job fair coming up in March. And I raised that question with them, should that person be there? And they had thought about that, but just in a different way. So that's another aspect. And you're 21 and you get a DUI, that's gonna follow you, unfortunately. It might not hinder you, but it will follow you. So that's something else to think about. Sorry, I kind of took that one over. Anybody else have?
So I was just gonna say everything that everyone said, it like hit the nail on the head. When I was listening to Vanessa, I would say that the one thing that I needed coming out was the interviewing skills. Like I felt like I was well prepared, but when I got in front of the panel, I was unprepared. One, to sit in front of a panel. Two, like the questions they threw at you, it's like, oh, I never would have thought of that. And it's hard to think on your feet. So having like mock interviews, that would have been helpful. And then Jennifer, before you even said it, I was thinking like all of the acronyms. I remember being, I don't know if it was my student teaching or my first year teaching, and I was in a meeting and I'm like taking notes and I'm thinking, I have no idea what these things mean. I'm gonna have to go home and figure it out. But I'm like nodding and smiling like I know what they're talking about. And they're talking about MIP and IEP and all of this stuff. And I had no clue what they were talking about. So I think that was very true. And then I think that building your resume is also an important thing, because if your resume doesn't get past the person who's looking at it, then you don't even get your foot in the door. And I've sat on the hiring committees at my school, and there have been like resumes or letters of interest. And as soon as you look at them, it's like, okay, I'm going to discard that one because this person didn't even use spell check, or the things that they put in their letter. It's like, well, someone should have told them that would totally not be appropriate to say, like Vanessa said. So I think all of those things, there's no class on that. You just have to learn by experience with those things. And I think that's something that teacher education programs can do to help the teachers along so that they can get into the workforce.
Candace, do you remember in your program if or anyone, if they had specific discussion about ethics? I know they're in the standards, but anything around that?
I feel like I had to in my master's level, but not in undergrad.
Okay, so that might be another thing to add to the list. Okay.
And I was just going to mention, because now we have social media, you have an internet presence, just making sure they're mindful of that and what they're putting out there, how they're portraying themselves. I know they probably take some type of class or talk about it in some way, but just kind of reminding them that a lot of times employers or schools may look at what their internet presence is before they even call for the interview.
We
Perfect.
have a question from Eric. For those of you who have been in on interviews, he's curious what schools look in at the interviewee's portfolio, or if they even do.
My
Right.
district is not, to my knowledge, but whenever I've sat in an interview and a candidate offered their portfolio, I think I always saw them get the job. So it's really nice to have that portfolio to offer, even if they're not asking for it, I think.
I was just going to add, and as a university supervisor, I encourage both hard copy and if they could do something digital, so that way, if they didn't have the time after the interview, you could just leave that information and they could look up a digital, even if it's like a website or just even a brief synopsis of you or a summary of your accomplishments or your goals and things like that.
Perfect.
So I have a question, and I know I'm on a panel supposed to be answering, but this question was asked to me, and it's about the portfolio. I know new teachers come in with portfolios, but what about someone who is like shifting districts and they've been teaching for 15 years? At that point, should that person create a portfolio and say, well, this is what I've done the last 15 years? Or I want to go into administration, and I didn't know how to answer that question because I had never thought about it, but do 40-year-olds create portfolios and take them, or do you say, here's my resume and here's all of the experience I've had? I don't know.
Well, I can speak from like the MTOY and the recognition applications. When we ask for resumes, we get 15, 30-year-old resumes because they're in the same district. right? And so I would love to see a fresh, updated resume. I would love to see a portfolio. So from my point of view, and I'm not, higher ed, but yes, my answer would be yes. Well, thank you, everybody. Dr. Bazzi, I think I think this panel crushed it. So I just want to thank all our toys and I want to thank all the deans and directors. If you have any questions for us, if you would like to have them visit, just send me an email and I will send you back a form to fill out just for auditing purposes. And so please have us back. This was great. We enjoy this every year. And hopefully I look forward to the new cohort joining you next February.
Great. Thank you. And I think, Alan, are you taking over the breakout session directions?
Either myself or Jennifer, just so that we're all on the same page. There will be 4 breakout rooms. These are the topics we combined in 3 different situations based on the number of registrants and their interests. So please look closely at the title of the session and the italicized additional details underneath. You're able to stay in the one room, participate, or go between rooms. The time frame right now is 40 to 45 minutes. So that what says 30 minutes right there is has been updated. Are there any questions at all before Brian sends out the rooms to join? You're able to join on your own.
I would just like to say that the breakout rooms should conclude at noon, and we will be on recess for lunch. I'd like to go to recess for lunch. We'll be on recess for lunch from 12 to 1. If you'll come back at 1, then you'll go to your next breakout sessions. Thank you.
Okay, and Brian has shared the breakout rooms are open now. So please go to your options and select the breakout room that you would like to be a part of. If you click on the ellipsis right above more, that's where you have the option to join breakout room.
Well, welcome back after what is, I assume, some excellent and productive meetings in our job lock groups. Although we're not going to do a complete report out, is there anything that came up in any group that is like vital we all need to know? Besides the fact that the sun is shining, at least in some places. Okay, well,
I don't have, Diane, I don't have a specific thing, but just to put it on the record, I continue to truly enjoy our relationship with the MDE staff. Having been here as long as I have, there have been years where it hasn't been like this, and we all know that, and we're thrilled with the current staff and the newbies and everything else that you guys at the MDE are just killing it, and we really appreciate the partnerships.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sally.
Thanks, Sally.
And a big shout out to Brian. Thank you, Brian, for making all this facilitation happen online. This saved everybody time and gas and the environment, and we didn't have to go out where it was cold or nasty. And yay, go Brian! Thank you so much. If you will, if those of you who have taken notes for the groups, if you would send those to Stein, that would be great, and he will pop those through to me, and I will send those on. And you can look for some information, I assume sometime in February, about registering for our May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd meetings and workshops. So other than that, I hope that you have happy trails and that you leave, as I said before, with a smile on your face and a song in your heart. Happy trails.